Welcome everyone to Roundabout Books author event with Tracey Lange and Nicole Meier for the release of the Connellys of County Down. My name is Julie, I'm the events manager here at the store. We want to take this opportunity to acknowledge that our bookstore resides on the ancestral, unceded lands of the Confederate tribes of Warm Springs. In our neighboring area are also the unceded lands of the Confederate tribes of Siletz Indians and the tribes of the Grand Ronde. We encourage everyone to learn more about the land you occupy and the story of its peoples. How many of you are attending an event with Roundabout Books for the first time? Quick show of hands. Yay. Thank you so much for being here. If you weren't aware, we are in our 7th year. Our anniversary is actually Halloween, so look for some fun stuff happening that day. And thank you to our authors who continue to bring us new customers. It's your being here brings them here, so thank you very much. Thank you also for using our new ticketing system. We're working out some kinks, so if you're not keen on using Eventbrite, please know that you can also pay for the $5 admission or the purchase of the book here in the store. So this helps us keep events like this going. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. Some upcoming events this Thursday, and I should have grabbed it, we have Lisa Kentgen to discuss her book, The Practice of Belonging. That's that orange book right up there. It's an inspirational guide to the 6 core qualities of healthy communities for anyone looking to build community as a source of connection and a vehicle for social change. We're really excited for this event because it goes along with our community conversation series that will actually wrap up the following Thursday on August 10th with the dialogue of a hopeful future. So if you haven't been to any of those, some of them are on our YouTube channel. You can watch those and come on Thursday. That is a free event. So be sure to check out our website. Now the reason you're actually here. Tonight is extra special because it is the official release of Tracey's new book, The Connellys of County Down. That means that only the staff, or a select few who got advanced reader copies, have had the pleasure of reading this fantastic book. So I know things that you don't know. Really cool that way. It's also special because we are joined by local author Nicole Meier, whose books are right here and available for purchase tonight. And if there's one you're missing, including the Second Chance Supper Club, please let us know and we'll order it. That's my favorite one. So Tracey Lange was born and raised in New York City. She graduated from the University of New Mexico with a degree in psychology before owning and operating a behavioral health care company with her husband for 15 years. She completed the Stanford University online novel writing program and is the author of We Are the Brennans and the Connellys of County Down. She currently lives in Bend, Oregon with her husband, 2 sons, and beloved German Shepherd. I turn it over to you, ladies. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Tracey.
Is this on?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole, this is Tracey, and this is great. I'm so happy to be talking about this because I'm a huge fan, so I'm fangirling and I'm interviewing. Okay, so maybe because most of the people here have not read the book yet, can you just give a very no spoilers summary about what your book is about?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is right. I've never used one of these before. Okay. So first of all, thank you all so much for being here tonight. This is actually super special because when my first book came out, we were still in the middle of COVID. So I didn't do any live. I didn't get to really have a book launch, and a couple people threw local book club parties, which was awesome. But that was about it. So this is extra special for me. As far as the basic idea of the Connellys of County Down, basically it's about a woman who, at the very beginning of the book, is released from prison after serving a 1.5 years on a drug charge. And she is returning home to the family fold and trying to rebuild her life at the same time. And her homecoming kind of sets in motion all sorts of emotional disruption in the house with her siblings and her young nephew. And so that's really what the story is about, is her trying to kind of navigate life post-prison and all the obstacles that come with that, as well as sort of help her family, because they're all sort of carrying some pretty heavy secrets that are threatening to kind of tear them all apart. So her homecoming sort of forces them all to decide whether or not they're going to finally deal with these issues. So that's the basic idea.
So interesting that she talks about household disruption when she was writing it during COVID at home.
Yes,
Did that play into a part of it?
Yeah, that was definitely my COVID book. You know, we were on lockdown essentially, couldn't go anywhere. And here in Oregon, we had wildfires that summer that were so bad. We had the worst air quality in the world for a moment there. And so we couldn't even go outside. So this is definitely where I went to escape and yeah, just stay sane, really. So I had a lot of fun with this family, and but yeah, it's definitely my COVID book.
So would it be fair to say that this idea came to you during that time, or had you been thinking about this for a little while?
No, I land on an initial idea, like the idea that someone was coming home from prison. That's kind of where this all started. And then I just go to characters, and I just sit with those characters for up to a year, usually. So it was already there, sort of brewing for a long time before I actually started writing. But yeah, I was, when we, when it all went shut down, that's when I really started to get into this book, so.
Okay, so a big part of the book is County Down, and for the audience that doesn't know anything about it, it'd be great to hear a little bit about how County Down, the real County Down, inspired you, what your connection is, how you brought that into the story.
Yeah, I love to talk about that. So, County Down is a county in Northern Ireland, which is it's where my dad was from, and it was a huge part of our life. His family. He was one of 15. He had 7 brothers and 7 sisters, and they all had kids. You know, I have something like 60 plus first cousins. Then my mom is one of 4, and we have kind of sprawling family throughout New York and then Ireland. But it was such a special place, and we spent most of our summers there growing up. I felt very close to that part of the family. So that's where County Down comes from. It's definitely a big nod to my dad and his family.
And a beautiful setting, like just to think about Ireland and how beautiful that is, and just to bring that into the book, even though the book isn't written in that setting, just to give the nod to it. I really, really love that.
Yeah, it seemed a perfect backdrop for the fairy tales that are kind of come into play there. And it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous place. So I wanted to bring that into the story.
Speaking of fairy tales, so in the book she references a character named Finn McCool, and I'd never heard of Finn McCool. So can you talk about this, and was this a story you grew up learning when you were young?
I had heard the story of Finn McCool, but there are lots of stories about Finn McCool. He's kind of this mythological hero, and his claim to fame, he's got many claims to fame, actually. But I love the story of the giant. He supposedly was a giant, and there was a giant in Scotland that was threatening. And so if you've ever been, by chance, to Northern Ireland, there's a beautiful land feature called the Giant's Causeway. And Finn McCool supposedly, in an effort to rid Ireland of this Scottish giant, threw chunks of the coastline into the water and created this feature. And so I love that story, and it definitely has a little role here in the book.
And we won't give it away, but fairy tales are referenced in this story. Finn McCool was referenced, and I just thought that was so original because it's something I didn't know about.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to switch from light fairy tales to something a little heavier, and that is the topic of mental health, which I really appreciated. So she writes characters that are so rich and layered, and they have real human issues, real human flaws, which we all do. And I know you have a background in mental health care. So how did that influence, play a part? Did you have a difficult time knowing when to rein it in and when to really go there in terms of this story?
So definitely, I worked in the mental health field for about 20 years with families from all over the country, all walks of life. And I always found their stories so compelling. They're so different, so unique. And that's kind of what fascinated me, those relationships. And so that fuels my first book as well, these family dynamics and digging into all of that. So as far as there are definitely some serious struggles some of the characters are dealing with. I'm not really giving anything away, but there's someone that kind of struggles with hoarding, for example, or And all of that comes from my own experience in the mental health field and working with families struggling with those issues, as well as people coming out of prison and trying to, get back on track with their lives. And then part of it is research, for sure. Everything, either there's a character that struggles with a traumatic brain injury, and so while I have some experience with all of those, I also did a fair bit of research just to make sure. It's fiction, but we always want to make sure we feel like we're presenting a pretty accurate picture. But yeah, a lot of it comes from families or just experiences I had in that field.
Yeah, I really appreciate it because, as we all know, when you read books, it's supposed to develop empathy with the reader so we can understand how to walk in someone else's shoes. And for me, for example, there's a character with hoarding in issues in the book. I have not walked in that person's shoes, and I had so much empathy, and he wrote it with such a grace of letting me slip into someone else's sort of situation and feel why they feel the way they feel. So that was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the idea, especially with that behavior. I think it's largely misunderstood. So that's one of my goals, is always to try to bring some awareness to that and to put you in that person's shoes, whatever they're struggling with. And I mean, even if you don't have to like the character, but if you can understand them, to me that's my favorite thing to write, are characters that are kind of a hot mix of really good intentions usually, but some really bad decision making. So I think if you can put someone in their shoes and help them understand, then I've done a lot of what I've set out to do.
Yeah, and really timely because COVID hit, people were stuck at home, and a lot of things kind of came to the surface that people were dealing with personally. So I think that's really going to resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you, I hope so.
Okay, so you just segued into my next question.
Okay.
And that is, you have a theme of good intentions gone awry. And I so appreciate that because who of us have not had good intentions that sometimes didn't go the way that we wanted them to go? So can you talk a little bit about how you wanted to carry that through the whole storyline, and it actually touched on each character's lives?
Yeah, I think that's just so human, and I think that's why people, at least the people that reach out to me, whether it's messages or emails or to tell me why they connected with the book, it's usually that these are very flawed people, but down deep they care about each other very much. There's a lot of love and warmth, even while they're making these terrible decisions and you want to shake them, I think it was Marilyn Robinson who said that we care about a character to the extent that character cares about other characters. So if you can follow that.
Say that again.
We care about a character to the extent that character cares about other characters. So I think that's why people are willing often to go along with some of my people that are making these awful, when they could just communicate and it would all be fixed, is that they do love each other and they usually have really good intentions. They're just kind of lacking some skills and knowing how to deal with it, And I think a lot of this, they're holding on to secrets, which is another, to me, that is always interesting to explore why people keep secrets. And sometimes it's to protect yourself, sometimes it's to protect the people you care about. But the most damaging secrets seem to come from shame. And that idea that if anyone, there's something about us that if someone knew, it would change the way they feel about us. We have to hide it from the world, and even the people closest to us. So those are kind of the things that I love to dig into with these characters and my stories. Yeah.
I love that. So when you were talking about this, it was making me think of every time I write a book, my siblings are terrified. Don't reveal my secrets. Don't tell them. Don't put me in the book. So did you have any of that with your family?
No, I can't. And to be fair, there's no one that's like, oh, that's my brother or that's my whoever. So, no, they might recognize things, but I think I've concealed the guilty enough that that certainly bleeds in there. I'm sure a lot of my relatives see something and know that that might be about me, but yeah, I tend to mix it up.
Okay.
So.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so one more sort of heavier topic, and we'll get back to light. But you include, it's not a spoiler alert because you talked about how your character comes onto the page leaving prison. And first of all, do you have any experience with anyone you've known in prison? How did you do that research? Because that to me felt very authentic, and I felt like there was nothing forced or fake about that.
Well, when I get out of prison, no, I have never been to prison. But again, in the field we worked in, my husband and I both did work with juveniles and adults that had come out of prison sometimes, and were facing those obstacles. As far as getting a job, having to undergo any kind of background check and how limiting that is, and also just navigating life, like meeting new people and what do you share with them, and how much do you tell them? Do you hide that from people, or and it can, depending on what size town you live in, are they already going to know? So all of those things were issues that we saw people deal with. But again, I went back in and read about different accounts of people that were coming out of prison and what it was like for them, what they were subjected to. And so again, a mix of some experience with people facing that, but then also just research and more up to date.
That was great. It's another example of how I, as a reader, had just total empathy and understanding of why these people made decisions they did, and then what it's like to be out in the world and feel that shame of hiding. I've been in prison, I can't get a job, I can't get a friend. It just creates a totally different conversation. And again, I commend you because I think this is all timely and relevant, and people need to hear stories like this.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so, because and she had some advantages that a lot of people don't have coming out of prison. She had a family, she had a place to live.
Right.
She has a little bit of financial support. So she was actually in a pretty good position compared to other people.
Okay, so I promised I'd take it lighter. One of the fun parts for me reading the book, because I love We Are the Brennans, is that I noticed that the Brennans pub was mentioned quite a bit in this story. So you're going to do that in all your books?
So far,
okay.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? I got to give my husband back there. That was all his idea.
Oh,
and I'm going to give him credit for that. He was reading an earlier draft, and they in that scene they were going to a restaurant. He said, "You just need to have him go to Brennan's."
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh my God, that's really good." So yeah, I'm gonna try to do that. It's fun, but also I love that idea because it's so true that the world's kind of a small place at the end of the day. So I'm gonna try to do it anyway. That's my goal. And actually, the third book, which will be out in the future, I hopefully have referenced, I think convincingly, both first books. So that's what I'm going for. We'll see if I can keep it up.
It's going to be like the Where's Waldo? Where's the Brennan's pub?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay, so I know as a writer, I don't like really when people say, what are you writing right now? Because it's a lot of pressure. But we do know you have another book coming out. Are there any writers in the group? Yes. Awesome. For the writers, what is something that you have learned today? What do you know today that you didn't know when you started your debut novel?
Wow.
No pressure.
I don't know if there's one thing I knew. I guess I'm more efficient now. I trust my gut more for sure. I've learned which feedback to really listen to and which maybe might not. At first you're kind of susceptible to trying to take it all in. And so you kind of have to find that line that, okay, this applies and maybe this doesn't. But I'm also much quicker to realize when I'm going down a road that's probably not going to work out. So I guess those are kind of the lessons I've learned, and I've just definitely become more efficient. I can still go through several drafts with each book, but I don't cut as many words over the long haul, I guess. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does. Do you have a favorite writing space?
I do almost all my writing in my office. It's a really small little nook off our kitchen. I wrote Brennan's actually at a table that was built into our kitchen, like a little desk. And I did that on purpose because I didn't want to miss anything. Our boys were still home then, and I wanted to be there when they got home from school and everything was going on and our friends were over. So I did learn to write through noise and distraction. And then we did move a few years ago, and I still wanted to kind of be in the heart of whatever was going on. So I don't write very often at coffee shops, or I get up and down a lot, and if I'm stuck for a moment, I'll go do laundry and come back. So I mostly write at home, and sometimes I actually come here and spend some time just to get out. But yeah, that's my writing space, home.
That's great. I love it. I always love seeing other people's writing space, you know, where artists work, and then I love hearing about their process, so.
Yeah, it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, well, I'm gonna turn it over to Q&A really quickly, but I do wanna know, since we have all readers in the group, I was just thinking, is there some story or some feedback that you just loved from a reader over the past few years? Like, what's one thing you really remember?
The feedback, or the people that reach out, the people that read, first of all, that anyone takes time, precious time to read your book is amazing. And then for people to, on top of that, reach out and say, oh my gosh, you know, this was like my family, or I'm so connected with this character, or that is just, I mean, I will answer those emails all day. I love that. I love feeling like people connected with it, and it just made their day, or made them laugh, or what, it made them, you know, think about their own family, whatever it is. So those are all highlights for me. And I appreciate those, and more than I realize. Yeah. If you don't ever think you're like bothering, and like they love to hear that you connected with their book or their characters. So
I agree with that. That's so true. Yeah. Okay, and you're very accessible, so.
yeah, I hope so.
She's nice. Okay, so I actually love Q&A because I think that that's where the conversation can be the most fun. So, who feels brave enough to ask a question? Carrie in the back.
Hi.
Hey, Carrie.
So, my question is, I thought you did an amazing job on the romance part of the story, which I don't like getting away with that, but, I was curious, did that come about organically, or did you kind of set out that she needed to have a new start when she came back, and then there was this new kind of relationship that she was gonna have to navigate?
I actually landed on that pretty early. I just thought it, and I'm not giving much away here. This all happens in the first few pages of the book. But one of the cops that put her in prison kind of keeps popping up, and I just thought it was interesting, the idea that this decent guy who does a good job, is super ethical, it's always kind of bothered him, this case that didn't turn out the way he thought it was going to turn out. So that's where that all started. And then where it was going to go, I didn't know, at first. But I did kind of land on him pretty early, and I thought that would just be an interesting facet to this whole situation.
It's really cool.
Nice. Okay, yes, Lynn.
I was wondering how you think growing up in a big Irish family shaped your storytelling.
Well, there's so many stories in a big Irish family, as I think you know.
I do that. So here's how it affected your life.
Yeah.
I mean, writing.
And I think I come from a lot of storytellers, even if they didn't write them down, they were always telling stories. So, and I loved that about my aunts and uncles and grandparents. But also, I grew up going to church, a Catholic church. That has definitely shaped my stories to some degree, especially We Are the Brennans kind of got into some of that. But all of it, it's such a big family, and then my parents did divorce, like it's just big, complicated, messy family. So from a young age, I was very much an observer of all of that, and yeah, it's all fascinating to me, those dynamics. But there's, I'm very comfortable in the Irish Catholic world, especially New York, and so yeah, there's a heavy influence in these books of that.
Okay, anybody else? Even though you haven't read the book, do you have any questions about being a writer? Or yes, go ahead.
I was wondering when you knew that you wanted to be a writer, and if there was somebody that was an encourager to you.
I have always loved to read and write since I was young. I've come across stuff that I did when I was a kid. I've loved it, but I never thought I could actually publish books. That just seemed, maybe because I was such a fan of books, but I was like, well, that's not going to happen. So I went into psychology, and that was my work for a long time. But even in that work, I wrote a lot. It was all different kinds. It certainly wasn't creative. It was fiction writing, but I did tons of psychosocial assessments for our clients, which was kind of telling their story. But then it was also policy procedure and kind of dry. But all of that was writing, and I always loved to write, and I think I kind of honed my skills there. But when I was able to leave that work and I had this time on my hands, I thought, okay, if I'm gonna try to do this, I gotta get on it now. So I have always loved it, but I didn't really start novel writing until about 8 years ago. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna jump in and try to do this.
Did you sign up with Stanford right away, or did you kind of just experiment?
For about a year and a half, I wrote a book that will never see the light of day, but I learned a lot from it. I learned a ton from it, and I took just some initial classes through Gotham, right? Just to kind of dip my toe in and workshop material, and then I realized there's so much I had to learn, and I actually started by looking at MFA programs, and in that research I found the Stanford program, which is a 2-year online novel writing program. It just focused on helping you write your novel and learn about the craft of writing. So I finished that up in 2019, and it was phenomenal. It was perfect for me, and I got to workshop a lot of my first book there, and I found my writers group there. So yeah, it was a great experience. But I went kind of tried to figure some stuff out first before I jumped into that.
Yes.
So I have a question. I am reading a book right now that is called My Bookstore, and it was actually published, I think, in 2012, and it's 84 authors talk about their favorite bookstore. And me, having just love roundabout books and so forth, but a lot of these authors talk about how their books were launched with the help and the support. So to get a book published is clearly more difficult than. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I just was curious, and then now just hearing you talk about your first book that won't see the light of day. Was that first book of yours so did you have any trouble launching your first book?
Yeah, so we often, maybe you do as well, have that first book that you just like,
I have
okay.
many books in a drawer.
Okay. Yeah, learned a lot, but okay. So We Are the Brennans was the first book that I published, and I got very lucky in the sense that path to publication went a little bit faster than some, because it is a really long, hard slog to get there. But I definitely went through the hell of querying agents, where you send a letter out and try to get them interested in your book, and in the end they all sort of passed. They all passed, which was fun. You know, the rejection road we go down for a while. So there was lots of that, and then I was very fortunate. I went to a conference and met the woman that would become my agent. Yeah, so it worked out in the end, but it's you can't write like because you think you're gonna make money. Like, you have to do it because you love it, or you'll give up, because it is a slog to get there. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and I hope this isn't giving too much away, but one of the things that I so admire about Tracey is that even though she has this amazing publisher and great agent, she writes all her books before she shows them and tries to sell them, which so many authors don't. You know, we try and just pitch a 3-page sort of summary and then see if someone will buy it. And Tracey's really dedicated. Am I speaking out of turn? Is that?
No, that's right. I didn't even know there was another way to do it. I didn't even know. Now that I've been in the business for a few years,
2-book deal.
Yeah, I know. I just wrote the book, and my agent said, okay, and then it got published, and then I was like, well, I'm working on the next one. She's like, all right, send it when it's ready. But I have met many people that, once they've published maybe a book or two, they'd rather sell a pitch, an idea, or a few chapters, and which I get, because there's some sort of reassurance of getting paid and getting published. I don't really know any other way to do it, and I like the way I do it because it's my story. But I also am so fortunate to have an agent and editor that see what I'm trying to do and help me get there. So there's so many paths to publication, and it just all depends on who you are and what you need and what works best for you. But yeah, I'm comfortable this way. I write what I want, and then I say, okay, tell me what's wrong.
But that's why I admire it, because you really believe in a story and you put your heart and soul into it, and that's what it comes on through on the page. So keep doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it would be strange to have someone else in the kitchen, another cook in the
Yeah.
kitchen. So yeah, I'll keep doing it this way as long as they let me.
Okay, yes.
Are you an organized writer? Or does it go all over the place and then you find things in?
I'm a little in the middle. There's lots of you probably heard, are you a plotter or a pantser? And I'm definitely not a pantser. I don't have the patience for that. Like I have to feel somewhat efficient, but I also don't work from an outline. I mentioned earlier, I live with these characters for a while, and then once I start writing, to some degree, they kind of tell me the story. Once you create these people, they set you in a direction. And so I have some plot points in mind. I never know the ending when I start my books. And the best way I've ever heard it described, I think it was E.L. Doctorow, who said, it's like driving at night with the headlights on. So I know what's right in front of me, what I'm doing right now, and maybe the next chapter or two, but beyond that, it's that first draft anyway, it's all kind of in the dark, yeah.
Okay, some good stuff there. Anybody else? Yes.
Can you elaborate a little bit more about your process, like your daily process here a little bit?
Yeah, it's, I definitely get at it first thing. I get up in the morning and take my coffee and go in and spend a few hours. And then I take a break just to do what has to be done, life. And definitely I try to, at the very least, take a walk. Any kind of exercise shakes the cobwebs loose, and you're constantly problem solving when you're writing a book, and so those things help me. It's often when I'm not at the desk that I find the solutions. And most days I do go back at it in the afternoon. Right now, summer, I've been trying to take a little step back in the afternoons, and taking up golf, which I don't know why I did that. So another frustrating thing. But anyway, so I've tried to take a step back and do some other things this summer, and but normally that's my routine. Morning, take a break, and then go back at it in the afternoon.
Nice. Good balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, these are all really good questions. Does anybody else have one that they wanted to ask? Don't be shy. This is your time. Yes, you, and then in the back.
I was just curious, like with your research, when you figured out you wanted to write about County Down and it's from your father's side or others, did you, during the lockdown, did you figure out I need to go and research this and take a trip? Or did you already have all this information before? Did you want to take the trip and go visit some of these places, or what was the process?
Well, I definitely had a really good feel for County Down, but my dad was also, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he was also a great resource. So any questions I had, or I could kind of lean on him, and it was fun to make him part of the book that way, actually. So I've actually been there since we were there last year, so that was great. But I did feel like I had a really good handle on County Down and what it was like, and going into this book.
Nice. Okay, and question in the back?
Yeah, I was just curious, you mentioned earlier that you were a reader a lot. From a young age, do you actively read while you write, and are there any kind of genres or writers that you read or don't read when you're in the writing process?
I'm always reading. I always have a book going, and usually an audiobook as well. And I think that's just part of the job. I don't know how people do it if they're not, reading. And I do read across a lot of genres. I don't read much fantasy or sci-fi probably, but I try to branch out and just see, get a taste of everything. So I'm always good, but I certainly look for things that I love family dramas. So that's I'll certainly seek those out, and it just makes me a better writer for sure. And I have a lot of favorite writers. It's hard to. We were just talking earlier about Barbara Kingsolver. I don't know if you've read Demon Copperhead. That's one of the best ones I've read this year by far. And so there's a lot. I could talk about that all day, so I won't go there. But anyway, yeah, I read a lot, and I try to mix it up as far as genre.
I agree.
It seems like you built such a great community around your fellow writers, like your publisher you love, but that seems almost fairy tale. Is that intentional, or do you happen organically? take time? Did you go through?
It definitely, there's a fair bit of luck involved there. I mean, I know I worked super hard, and I got my agent, and she's wonderful, and then I did get a great editor. And so far, I've been I've never been asked to do something that didn't feel, change something that didn't feel right, that didn't feel like it was gonna make it look better, which I hear, it certainly happens. So I've been very fortunate that way. But then I also found my writers group, and we've been doing this long enough now that they, accountability, support. I can send them something and say, what is wrong with this? And they can help me figure it out. So part of it is intentional, because you need to find those people yourself, like who's gonna help you get where you wanna go. But there was definitely some luck in there. Amazing publishing team and agent.
She's being modest. It is luck, but you deserve it, and you're talented. Stop it.
All right.
I will second her and say that the writing community is surprisingly supportive. It's not cutthroat, people trying to outdo each other. There's something about it that people know how hard it is to just get represented and to get a publisher that they felt your pain, they want to pay it forward, and yeah.
It's interesting because it seems like almost feel like that would be the norm.
Yeah.
It seems like such a great community.
Yeah, and I have new authors reach out, and if there's anything I can do to help, and because we've all been there, so yeah, it's a great community.
I admire you as an interviewer, and Tracey, you're very good at answering questions, because you really haven't given anything away about the book. It's so interesting. I mean, I just want to ask you all kinds of questions which could spoil it.
Right.
But in the beginning of the book, the mother starts, I'm going to try really hard, you can tell me why if I'm spoiling it. The mother tells tales to the children. And I wondered if you knew when you started the book that you were going to carry that through to the very last pages.
I didn't, not when I started.
Was it beautiful?
Yeah, there's just kind of a little thread of fairy tales in there, and these guys are going through a lot, and they need something that sort of connects them to their childhood with their mom, and so that's kind of where the fairy tales came from. And I think fairy tales are fascinating because they tend to be kind of dark.
Yeah.
There's a lot to them, so they lend themselves to this story, I think. But I didn't know. They were interesting to me, so I put them in there, but I wasn't sure exactly where they were going to go at first.
I think it was the Irish.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, really good. Do you have one, Julie?
Well, I wanted to take a step back and talk about the writing community, because both of you have been really helpful to the Central Oregon Writers Guild by donating your time. I think, didn't we do a Zoom last year and interviewing about how to get published and other things? And I think that that's one of the really, I won't say it's unique to our area, but I think the Central Oregon Writers Guild, both in tapping local people, but also uplifting those who maybe haven't been published before. And I happen to know that we have two people in the room right now who will be published this fall in the 2023 Central Oregon Writers Guild Anthology. If you want to raise
I
your
feel like they need to
hand,
stand up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I also want to point out that we have a local author, Carrie, back here, who we've done an event with, and I just think it's really sweet to see the different levels of publishing, because you're with what we would maybe consider a traditional or big five publisher, at least the imprint of them. Carrie's with a really local or really smaller independent publisher, and then Nicole, I don't know if you're still
All over the map.
Yeah, all over the map.
You've done it all.
But I think that that's what's really great, is that there's no, you're self-published or you're small published and we're not gonna talk to you. Like, I can't find any of that so far, and I really appreciate that about this community.
Yeah, Carrie reached out to me, I don't know how long ago that was, but I was so excited because I didn't know any local writers. Everyone I worked with was Zoom and lived in different parts of the country, so
What was really fun about that is we read We Are the Brennans, very local book club. I had no idea that she was local, and we all read it, and then someone texted was like, she lives here. So we fangirled and asked her to come out to our book club.
I'm also 99% sure that your Zoom of We Are the Brennans with Ellen Santasiero is still on our YouTube channel.
What's the YouTube channel, by the way? Because I didn't
Just
know.
Roundabout Books.
Okay.
If you just Google it through, like, in YouTube, it's under, like, Cassie's name because it's her email, but it says Roundabout. So it was from, like, 2.5 years ago.
2 years ago, that was my launch event. 2
Yes,
years
so
ago.
we did that on
so,
Zoom, so
yeah.
if you wanna go back and hear, and I think I asked a couple of dumb questions, but it was a great book too, so.
Thank you. Okay, and where can people find you if they wanna keep up with your next books and everything?
I have a website and pretty much Instagram. That's about,
Well, tell them what the website is.
TraceyLange.com. And Instagram is Tracey_Lange. And I do post a lot about my book, other people's books, and very much about the book community on Instagram, so, yeah.
Okay, well, I bet you have some anxious people who want you to sign books and to meet you, and thanks everybody, this was fabulous.
Thank you.
If you had already purchased a book through Eventbrite or the store, they're right back here. Yes, we can, for all of these are the for sale books. Just come see me to buy, sign, yep. We'll work it all out.
I need a pen, or